So, Diamond, last week in our session, you talked a lot about your feelings of anger following the death of Philando. And we agreed that a good homework assignment would be for you to add in some focused breathing this week as you felt your anger rising. How did that go for you?
I think it went okay. I was able to think about my breathing a few times as I was starting to get angry, and I guess it helped me calm down a little bit.
Okay, so it seemed like this exercise helped you some, but it maybe wasn't as helpful as you had hoped it would be. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I really thought this would help me get my anger under control, but I still feel it's so much of the time.
Okay, so when you realized that the exercise wasn't producing the results that you were wanting, what were you feeling?
I felt really sad and disappointed
And what was going through your mind?
that things will never get better for me.
Oh, I see. That must be a really hopeless feeling for you. Your response is what we like to call in cognitive behavioral therapy an automatic thought. We all have these, and they are thoughts that come to our minds without us consciously trying to think of them. So they just sort of pop into our heads. We often believe these thoughts are true, but in reality, they're often distorted in some way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so what we're going to do is try and identify these automatic thoughts and then learn how to evaluate them. And hopefully, we will be able to adjust how you think in some ways because our thoughts greatly impact our feelings and our behaviors. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I guess so. I just want to put all of this behind me and move on with my life.
I totally get that. You have been through a really traumatic time in your life. So let's start by focusing on the thought that you just stated. Things will never get better. Do you see how that thought can lead to your feelings of sadness and disappointed that you talked about?
Yeah, I can sort of see that.
Okay, I find that it can be helpful to use a triangle to get a visual of what we're talking about. So would it be okay if I showed you that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so when we have this triangle, there's three corners, obviously, on a triangle. And on one corner, there's your thoughts. And then on another corner is your feelings. And then on the other corner is your behaviors. And then there's arrows going in each direction between all of these. So it looks sort of like this. So if we fill in this triangle with your situation that we're just talking about, what would you put in the feelings category?
Um, I guess that would be sadness and disappointment.
Exactly. And what about in the thoughts?
That things will never get better.
That's right. So now we just have that behavior corner left. So how did you respond when you realized that you weren't getting the results you wanted from the exercise?
I just quit doing the breathing altogether because I felt like it wasn't working.
Okay, so we'll fill that in on the triangle as well. And now that we have all three of the corners filled in, we can see how they're each related to one another. Thinking that things will never get better makes you feel sad and disappointed, which then causes you to quit the focused breathing exercises altogether.
And then I'm right back to where I started, still feeling angry all the time.
Yes. So this can be a really helpful tool for identifying your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors in any given situation. So that in turn, we can adjust them to achieve better outcomes. And you can fill this out in any order. So you just begin with what you know.
So having the visual of the triangle definitely helps me see the relationship between the three.
Great. I'll give you a copy of this one that we're working on when we finish today. Do you think that it would be helpful for you to try and use this technique this week to identify your automatic thoughts as a way to practice kind of what we're talking about today?
Yeah, that would probably be a helpful thing to do.
Okay, great. Then how about you try and use this technique at least 2 times this week, and then we can discuss what you come up with at next week's session. Does that sound good?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, great. And just a little tip. Oftentimes, we can recognize our emotions pretty easily, but the automatic thoughts are a little harder to identify. So asking yourself the question, what was going through my mind, is usually a good way to figure out what the automatic thought is. So I'll write that down for you with the triangle so that you can keep it in mind this week when you're working on the assignment.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Um, but identifying our thoughts, however, is just the first step. Once we identify the thoughts, we must identify the distortions embedded in those thoughts and then adjust them in order to change how we feel. So let's look again at your thought that things will never get better. Are you actually to the point where you believe your situation will never get better?
No, that's probably a little bit extreme.
Okay, so can we agree that maybe it was unrealistic to think that you would be able to have your feelings of anger completely under control in such a short amount of time?
I guess so. But Philando was killed over a year ago. I feel like I should be doing better by now.
Do you really feel that a little over a year is long enough to cope with all that you have been through?
I guess you're right.
It seems like we agreed that maybe your thought, things will never get better, might be a little bit distorted. What if we looked at it this way? Healing takes time, and I need to be patient with myself through the process. Do you think this would change how you're feeling?
Yeah, I can see how that wouldn't make me feel as sad or discouraged.
Okay, let's write that down because I want you to remember that as we continue on in therapy. What do you think a good way for you to remember this would be?
Maybe to read it over every day when I wake up.
I think that's a great idea. You think you'll just remember to do it every morning, or would a reminder of some kind be helpful?
I should probably set a reminder on my phone so I don't forget. I will do that right after our session.
Okay, that sounds great. When we were setting our agenda today, you mentioned that you also wanted to discuss your increased feelings of anxiety. Can you tell me about a situation this week where you felt anxious?
Yeah, last week, Deanna and I were at the park and I heard a loud pop. Maybe a car backfired. I'm not sure. I immediately felt panic and anxiety swell up inside of me because I thought it was a gunshot.
That must have been a really scary moment for you. Let's look at this situation like we did with the situation earlier in our session with that CBT triangle that we talked about. What went through your head when this happened?
That I thought I was about to be shot like Philando was.
So that is one of those automatic thoughts that we just talked about. And how did this make you feel?
Extremely afraid, like you said.
Yeah. So you've identified both your thought and your feeling now, like we talked about before. So what was your behavior in response to this situation?
I grabbed Deanna and we immediately went home and I told her we were never going to the park again.
Okay, so I think that reaction could be based on another automatic thought. Why did you feel that you could never go to the park again?
Because it's dangerous out there and we are safer in our house.
So are you never going to leave your house again?
Well, no, that would be impossible.
Okay, so can we agree that maybe there's some distortions and a little bit of irrationality involved in this thought pattern?
Yeah, I guess so.
Let's see if we can identify what some of those distortions are. Are people regularly shot at your neighborhood park?
No, I don't know that anyone has ever been shot there.
Okay, so what made you think that you were going to be shot when you were at the park?
It's just that when Philando was killed, the gunshots were so loud. And every time I hear a loud bang, it takes me back to that moment when it happened.
Okay, so it sounds like that there is maybe an assumption that because of your experience, every loud noise you hear since then is a result of a gunshot. But in reality, the majority of the loud noises that you hear are not gunshots. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. The only gunshots I have heard are when Orlando was killed.
Okay, so I'm wondering if there is a way to modify your thinking in this situation that will allow you to maintain your vigilance about remaining safe, because that is important, but also giving you the security to feel like you can get out of your house. Are there any places that you are able to go that you feel safe and don't feel as anxious or have those thoughts of being shot?
I like to go to the library because it's usually quiet in there.
Okay, do you think you could maybe try and spend some time at the library this week so you can begin to retrain your brain to know that you can be safe at places outside of your home?
Yeah, I can do that. I have some books I need to return anyways.
Okay, let's add that to your homework list, and we will discuss how you felt during your time at the library next week.
Okay.
And as we wrap up today's session, can you summarize what you have accomplished today?
Well, I have learned about automatic thoughts and how to use the CBT triangle to identify them.
Good. And you've also have a better understanding of your anxiety associated with loud noises. And you learned about how adjusting distorted feelings can change how you feel. You're planning to work on several of these areas this week with your homework that we agreed on. And we'll discuss all your findings at our next session. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay. Is there any feedback you have for today's session? Anything that you didn't like or would want to do differently next week?
No, today was helpful. I am hoping to make some progress this week with my homework assignments.
Okay, wonderful. I look forward to seeing you at our next session.